Hello, and welcome to the Power of Authority podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Prince. Each week, you'll hear tips, stories, and inspiration from people who are leveraging the power of authority in their business, leadership, and life. It's time to get your story out of your head and onto paper so that you can grow your business, make a difference, and build your authority. After all, you can't spell authority without author. So let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to the Power of Authority podcast. My name's Michelle Prince. I'll be your host, but I am just so excited to kick off this podcast. This has been a long time coming for me, and I love podcasts. I listen to them all the time, and the reason I'm doing this podcast is because I am so passionate about helping people to find their story. We all have a story. Every story matters, and when we find our story, when we get our voice, when we share our story, that's how we make a difference in this world. And it's also one of the ways that you can really build your credibility, build your authority, and that's why we call it the power of authority. Now, I do love helping people to tell their stories, and I love helping them to publish books. So part of the word authority is a play on words. You know, you can't spell authority without author, and so we will be talking about publishing books. But this is so much more. It's more about really just, what is that authority journey? You know, how do you go from being somebody that has a story, that has a heart to help people, that has some incredible experiences and passions? How do you go from that to somebody that is really making a difference, really an influencer, somebody that has a platform that is impacting thousands and thousands of people's lives? Well, that's what the authority journey really is all about. And that's what we're going to be talking about today as we kick off this podcast. I'm also going to be having tons of guests throughout all the episodes talking about how they've leveraged the power of authority in their own business with their own book, and just some great stories along the way to give you some inspiration to hopefully tell your story too. But let me kick things off with the authority journey. And all of this, by the way, is based, taken from my book. My latest book is called The Power of Authority. How do you get the revenue, respect, and results you deserve by authoring a book? But I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the authority journey. Regardless if you write a book or not, this is really about how to really take your story, figure out your story, and then leverage it to help more people. So where do we start with the authority journey? Well, it starts with clarity. I mean, everything in life is about clarity, right? You have to know what you want. So that's really the first question. What do you want? What do you want for your professional life? What do you want for your career? What do you want for your personal life, your relationships? All of those things matter more than you know, because until we get clarity on what we want to accomplish and why we want to accomplish it, that's usually when we're in that holding pattern. We can't move forward unless we have that clarity. So the very first step in really building your authority, being that go-to expert, is clarity. What do you really, really want? I encourage you, if you're listening, grab a pen and paper. Don't do it if you're driving, but grab a pen and paper and write whatever comes to mind, because the more clarity you have, the more this journey is going to take shape quicker and faster and better and help more people sooner. So that's really the first step. But it's more than just what do you want. Really think about, why do you want that? You know, so many people that I meet when I'm out speaking or at events, you know, people want to write books. Lots of people want to write books. That's one of the reasons why I loved helping them to do it, because having a book is one of the greatest business cards you'll ever have. But I always ask them why. Why do you want to write a book? I mean, there's so many reasons to write a book. There's really no right or wrong. It's just, you need to know your reason. Are you writing a book or wanting to tell your story because you want to leave a legacy? Maybe you want your kids or your grandkids to know more about your backstory. That's fantastic. If that's the reason you're going to write a book, great. You just have to have that clarity. But maybe you want to build your authority for other reasons. Maybe you want to build a platform. You want to get on stages and speak or do some more consulting or coaching. If that's why you're wanting to build your authority, fantastic. But you do need to know that from the get-go. So what do you want? What do you really, really want? And why is the first starting point in this authority journey. The second step is uncovering. Now, uncover means what's holding you back. And being honest with yourself. You know, there's so many things that hold us back in life. Fear of success, fear of failure. Those are very, very real fears. But what I really see more than anything, when I meet somebody that has an extraordinary story, or they have the potential to make a huge impact, but for whatever reason, they're not doing it, is usually because of a lack of belief. It's usually something that's going on up here that's keeping them from their best. And I know because part of my story, and you're going to get to know me really well on this podcast, but part of my story is I had a block. I had a block of belief that I had something to say, that anyone cared about my story. But the truth is, everyone has a story, and every story matters. And even if it matters to one person, it's worth telling. But what are you telling yourself? What are the beliefs that you hold on to as it relates to business, as it relates to money, relationships, every aspect of your life? You have the level of success that you have based on what's going on up here. So the second part of this journey to building your authority is figuring out not just what you want, but what is really holding you back. You can't move forward if you don't know what's holding you back. So that's really the second step. Then we dive into identify. And what does that mean? Identify means, what is your story? This is where I get really, really excited. I teach a seminar called Bookbound, the bookboundworkshop.com. And that is a seminar where we help people to figure out their story. And the first step is figuring out, who are you? What do you have to share with someone personally or professionally that could make an impact? That's all your story is. That's all a book is, really. I'll give you a quick little exercise to dive into, but think about what you're passionate about. You know, your story is always going to be tied to your passions because your passions are part of your purpose. But it's not just about passion. There's more to it than that. You also have to look at your experiences. What have you experienced in life? You know, do you have experience in business? Do you have experience as a parent? Do you have experience writing a book? You know, where are your experiences in life? But experiences can be a little tricky too because we experience things in life we don't always want to experience. That's part of your story. So even if it was something bad, maybe it was divorce or bankruptcy or possibly abuse, even though you went through something negative, it doesn't mean you have to share that part of it, but you do need to know it's part of your story. It's part of who you are. So I always tell people, the perfect story, your perfect first book is an intersection of your passions and your experiences. It's all right there. Everything you would ever put into a book or into a blog or possibly a podcast, it's all right here. It's just your story. So that's the next step in that process is identifying what is your story. The next stage, by the way, as we go through this podcast and all the episodes, I'm going to be diving into each one of these in detail. But so this is just the overview. But the next step is really to document. This is super important. Whether or not you want to publish a book does not matter. You have to get all of that you know that's floating around in your head. You have to get it out of your head and onto paper. It's that critical because no one knows really what you know and no one knows your story better than you. So this is where most people get stuck. They think, oh, you know, I have a couple things that I could share with someone that could help them in business, or I've gone through some things personally that I know if I shared it with someone, it would help them to get through it faster. But if you don't get it out of your head and if you don't document it, then you can't help anyone. And you certainly cannot build your authority by keeping it all inside. So that's why that's such an important step in the authority journey is it's not just figuring out what your story is, it's documenting it and getting it out on paper. But then it goes to the next step, which is really exciting because now it's figuring out, okay, how do you want to get that information out there? How do you want to publish? And that's the next stage in the authority journey. Now, I happen to love to publish books, and that's part of what we'll be talking about on this podcast. But really, there's so many other ways to publish your story. You can publish it in a blog. You can publish it on a podcast. You can do videos. You can do digital courses. You can speak on stages. You can share that information in coaching sessions. The question for you is, what's going to be the best way for you to publish your story? And what's going to be the easiest, fastest way for you to do? Excuse me. So that's really part of the step in this. And again, it's not so much that you write a book, but you do have to get that content out. And I just happen to believe a book is one of the easiest ways to do it and one of the fastest ways to build your authority. But let's move on to the next step, because this is where I love this part of it too. Once you publish, once you have your story, once you know where where you're going to put it, right? How you're going to get it out there. Now you have to build the platform. The power of authority is really all about leverage. It's not just so much having the story. It's how are you using it to make a difference in other people's lives? So really looking at, what can you do to build your authority? What can you do in addition to just documenting it that will allow you to do that? For me personally, most of my business, especially in the early days, was speaking. I love to speak. That's one of my ways that I love to share information with people that I hope will make a difference in their life. Well, in doing so, that authority platform is just being created because of the nature of speaking. But I wouldn't get on those stages if I didn't have a book. So for me, that natural building the platform started with a book, then it went to stages, and now I do so much more in terms of seminars and coaching and publishing and things like that. But what is your platform, and how can you really leverage your story to build your authority? Now, the final step in the authority journey is what I call impact, because something amazing happens when you find the courage, when you put yourself out there, when you claim your authority and you share it with people in a way that numerous people can get that information quickly. A book, speaking, podcast, etc. But impact means this is when you're making a difference with your story. This is when you're inspiring other people. And the one thing I love about this whole authority journey and the power of authority is it's not just about you, and it's not just about building this platform. You see, once you hit that impact part of the journey, that's when it goes to its full circle, because now you're inspiring somebody else to tell their story. Now you're inspiring somebody else to get clarity on, well, what do they really want? You see, when you have your story and you share it in a book or on a stage, that's when people get hope. We all want hope. We all want to know that if they could do it, we could do it. If this person can get through that tough time, then maybe I can too. So the impact that you have just by sharing who you are. Again, your story is just who you are. But when you do it, and when you put it in a platform that will really attract more people, that's when you inspire other people. And that's what's really exciting for me about the power of authority. It's not just about being the authority. I mean, there's a purpose behind it, right? You really can't make a difference in other people's lives if you don't have their attention, if you don't have the ability to speak into them. So how do you do that? Well, you get clear on your story, you put it in a book, you speak on it, you coach on it, you do all different things to get that story out there so that you can really make an impact in this world. So that's really what this podcast is all about. My goal is that you'll hear in one of these episodes, something that will just give you an aha moment to say, oh, you know what? I never thought about that. And maybe I do have a story. Maybe I do have an opportunity to help other people. I assure you that you do. You have a story. It matters. And now we're going to help you to get it out there. So I hope that you will stick with us on our journey as we launch this podcast. But before we get into our first episode, I really want to share something with you. I have a gift for all of you. And in fact, my newest book that we're talking about, The Power of Authority, is something that I would love to give to you. We have, not forever, a limited time. I'm giving away the book for free. All you have to do is pay shipping and handling, and we'll just ship it directly to you. But go to thepowerofauthority.com. Again, thepowerofauthority.com. Just fill in your shipping information. Again, we just ask you to cover the cost of shipping, but I'm buying the book for you. It's a $20 book. But I know that if you read that book, not only will you know exactly what your story is, but now you're going to have a roadmap and a plan to walk you through that authority journey that we just talked about so that you can start making an impact. You can start getting more revenue in your business because a book will attract more revenue, I assure you. But it's also going to give you more respect. People look at you differently when you put yourself out there. People look at you differently when you're an author. And so it's going to do that. And then so much more results in everything that you do. So I encourage you to take advantage of that free gift. And if you also want to learn more about me, what I do, my speaking topics, and some of the other books and things that I've created, go to michelleprince.com, and reach out to me and let me know how I can support you on your journey to becoming an authority. See you next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Power of Authority podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and find me on social media and let me know, what did you like best about this episode? And don't forget, share this with a friend. We'll see you soon.